Howdy, my friends. It is high noon and time for us to start this meeting. It's the bar prep kickoff for February 2024. Somebody give me a thumbs up or say something so that I know I'm not just talking to myself. All right, there we go. All right, so this is going to be a meeting where I tell you what you need to know for the February bar exam. I'm going to keep this as short and sweet as possible because, my friends, you should already be studying for the bar exam, and I don't want to cut into your study time too much. So let's just jump right into it and see what the February bar exam looks like. So the number one question that I'm sure you all have is, what is the least amount of work I can do and still have an excellent chance of passing on the first try? This is a question that I have spent the past 4.5 years trying to answer, ever since I took over this job here at Texas A&M. And I have some pretty good answers. You might not like the answers because the answer is you have to do a lot of work. Let's break it down and see how much there is. First of all, you've got to do 85% of Barbary or 75% of Themis. Why the difference? Is simply because there are more hours in Themis than there are in Barbary. So if you do 85% of Barbary, that's 330 hours. If you do 75% of Themis, that's 330 hours. And that does seem to be the sweet spot, based both on their data and on our data. It's a one-to-one replication almost in terms of what the data show. That's at 330 hours. Okay, you need to do 1,700 multiple choice questions in addition to what Barbary and Themis are serving up to you. Now, the best way to do that, in my opinion, is Adaptabar. If you are on Barbary, you definitely need to get Adaptabar because the Adaptabar questions, as I'll discuss later on in today's presentation, are different from the ones that you're going to have in Barbary. If you're on Themis, they've got this product called UWorld that they're giving away to you for free. Is it as good as Adaptabar? I'll talk about that a little bit later too. But anyway, 1,700 questions in either Adaptabar or UWorld. And that works out to about 90 hours because you're not just answering the questions, you're answering the questions and reviewing the answers, even on the ones you got right, to make sure you got it right for the right reason. Next, 130 essays in some form or fashion. When I say in some form or fashion, I don't mean you're going to write out 130 essays all the way. That would take an inordinate amount of time. But you are going to write out the first ones that you do until you get comfortable with the bar exam essay format and are convinced that you can get it done in 30 minutes. After that, you'll move to mostly outlining. And then at the very end, say mid-February, when we're really in crunch time, you're going to do something that I call read, think, review, where you look at the prompt, you close your eyes and think about what you would write, and then you look at the answer to review it and see what you got right and what you got wrong. More about that in February. But all in, you're looking at about 40 to 60 hours on essay practice. Now, this is combined essay practice on your own, plus the essays that Barbary and Themis will assign to you. 5 to 10 MPTs, that's the multi-state performance test. Why the range? Well, it depends on how good you are at the MPTs already now. If you're already pretty good and you do one every week or every other week up through the bar exam, that'll be enough. If you're not very good at it, then you need to do a bunch of MPTs to get there. 5 to 10, it may be closer to 15 to 20, depending on how comfortable you are with that. And that's going to take anywhere from 10 to 20 or more hours, which gives us a grand total of 470 to 500 hours minimum. Yeah, that's a lot of time. It's a lot of time between now and the bar exam. But our data show that this is what it takes to get that bar pass rate up to that high level that we've had for the past couple of years now. So let's keep that party going. Put in the time and you will pass the bar exam. Okay, let's talk about the other question that maybe you hadn't even thought about, but it's, why is the February bar exam pass rate so low, not just in Texas, but around the country? This slide shows the July pass rate versus the February pass rate going all the way back to 2017 for all the schools in Texas. And as you can see, July is always substantially higher, sometimes way higher than the February pass rate. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about why that might be true. And there are some obvious reasons. For instance, people who are working a full-time job and so they didn't graduate on time in May like most people did, they're probably going to be working that full-time job while they're studying for the bar exam, and that's going to impact their performance on exam day. People who maybe they weren't great students and they needed that extra semester to graduate, they're probably not going to be great students on the bar exam either. I don't know, but that's going to affect performance. But those two things don't account for the totality of the situation. There's something else going on here. And after thinking about it for a long time, I concluded that it's simply because the February exam is in February, which is 2 months after December. And nobody wants to study in December. I mean, ask yourself right now, how motivated are you going to be over the next 10 days to study? Realistically, it's going to be difficult because if you just graduated from law school, all of your buddies who took final exams with you are now slacking off and living the easy life. And what do? You've got to study even harder than you did for your final exams to get ready for the bar exam. That's nuts. It's not pleasant, but that does contribute a lot. There's just so much going on in December and maybe even early January that it distracts people from studying. So yes, it's because nobody wants to study in December. It is really hard, but you're going to buck that trend by making every day count. Now, you can take off a couple of days for the holidays, Christmas Eve, Christmas. If you celebrate Christmas, that's fine. But you can't take off a week. You can't take off 2 weeks. You can't even take off more than 2 consecutive days in any one week, in my opinion, because I've seen people fall behind because of that. So stay strong and study throughout the holidays. Don't fall behind over the next 3 weeks. If you do, it's not impossible. You might still have a good chance of passing the bar exam, but your life is totally going to suck in January and February because you're going to be working so many hours just to study for the exam. And then, let your family know that you're not going to be home for the holidays. Even if your body is there, your mind is not going to be this year because you're doing this very important task. You're studying for the bar exam. And let me tell you that people who have not taken the bar exam, and right now that includes you, but you're going to be a pro at it after a little while. But people who haven't certainly been to law school or taken the bar exam, they don't understand what you're going through. They don't understand the magnitude of this task. So I would take a little time to tell your loved ones, hey, I might be around, but I'm going to be studying so that they understand how necessary this is and that you're not just, now that you've graduated from law school, some jaded lawyer who's going to ignore them for the rest of your life. It's just this little 3-month period that we've got to get through, and then everything's going to be good. Okay, so that's why the pass rate is so low. Back to this chart that shows the difference between the July and February pass rates for all Texas schools. Let me overlay on that the July and February pass rates for Texas A&M. It's kind of interesting because you'll notice that the blue dashed line, which is our February pass rate, kind of disappears off the top of the chart there. That's because for the past 2 Februaries, our pass rate has been 100%. Now, there's a very small sample size. We only had 4 people in 2021 and 6 people in 2022, and these are all first-time JD examinees. This time, it looks like we're going to have 9, 10, I think 13 people, first-time JD examinees in February. And I am relying on you first-time JD examinees to keep that pass rate up at 100%. And for all of you, whether you're first time, second time, JD, LLM, foreign trained LLM, if you do the things I suggest, then you're going to have the result that these folks for the last 2 Februaries have had. They got to 100% because they did what I said. They listened to my advice, which is not the same as Barbry's advice. It's not the same as Themis's advice. This is the Texas A&M advice. And that's why we had the highest pass rate in Texas last year. And not just last year, that was the highest pass rate in Texas for the entire past decade. We can keep that going if you do all the things. Let's talk about what the things are. Okay, so what's on the bar exam? Hopefully you know this already. If you've started studying for the bar exam, this is like the first thing they tell you in Barbary and Themis. But you've got 2 multi-state performance tests. They're worth 20%. You've got 6 essays worth 30% and 200 multiple choice questions worth 50%. So the MPT, it's that skills test where you have to write a letter, a memo, a brief, something like that. It's completely closed universe. It's my favorite part of the bar exam because you don't have to know any law. They'll tell you all the law that you need to know to write a decent memo, brief, whatever it is they tell you to do. What you do have to do to get ready for that is practice writing MPTs so that you can complete whatever kind of task they're asking for and get it done in 90 minutes. And the 90 minutes is the hard part. You all know how to write letters and memos and briefs, but getting these things done in 90 minutes is where the practice really comes in. So you got 2 of them. They're back to back on exam day. They give you two booklets at the beginning of the 3-hour time slot, and you can divide up your time however you want. I strongly recommend that you do 90 minutes per each problem. Don't spend the first 2 hours on one problem and then not have enough on the second one. It's graded on a 1-2 scale, actually a 0 to 6 scale. Where the person who grades this thing is pretending like they are your boss at the court or at the law firm or wherever it is you're supposed to be writing this thing. and they're evaluating it as though you're the junior associate. And a 6 means it's so good they would sign their own name to this thing and send it out. And a 1 is it's so bad they wouldn't even ask you to rewrite it. It's hopeless. They're just gonna do it themselves. It'd be faster. And then in between are the numbers that represent different levels of competency. So it's difficult to get a 6 on these things. It really is, because there's just not enough time to write that quality of a product. What you're shooting for is somewhere in the 4 to 5 range, ideally. Our data show that if you can get an average of 3.5 on the 2 MPTs, that's probably not going to tank your chances of passing the bar exam. Your other scores will have to be higher to compensate for that, but 3.5 is good enough. 4 to 5 is even better. 4 is generally what we call the minimal acceptable score, but our data show that 3.5 is actually more realistic. Okay, that's the MPT. The afternoon of the first day, you're going to get these 6 essays. Again, it's 3 hours, 6 essays. So you'll have an average of 30 minutes per essays. They give you a booklet with all the essays in it. You can take them in whatever order you want to do. And you can spend as much time on any one essay. I do recommend that you spend 30 minutes per essay. It does test 15 possible topics, which are all listed here on this slide. So it's quite broad range of topics that you have to know. And your depth of knowledge has to be pretty deep as well. It's not just very skimming the surface of these topics, but it's getting, they dig down to find some obscure stuff to test you on. Yeah, so you will type your answer on a laptop, but they will give you a paper booklet that you can mark up with a highlighter or a pen as you're taking the exam. Lastly, on the second day, you're going to have 200 multiple choice questions, 100 in the morning, 100 in the afternoon. You'll have 3 hours in each session. That works out to 1 minute and 48 seconds on average per question. Again, you can divide your time up however you want within that 3-hour block and 100 questions. What you're going to find is that some questions are relatively trivial, or you know the law really well and they take about 30 seconds to answer, whereas some of them are going to be more complex. The real property questions tend to have long, complex fact patterns, and you have to trace an interest through various ownerships. And those can take 5 minutes to come to a solid answer, but on average, 1 minute and 48 seconds. And this is the most important part of the exam because it is worth 50%. So you really want to get good at multiple choice, not just in terms of your substantive knowledge, but also in terms of the skill of answering multiple choice questions and doing a good job at it to demonstrate what you actually know. Okay, so here's the list of topics that it covers. This is the same list that I had on the slide for the essay topics, but the ones that are highlighted in red are the topics that are also tested on multiple choice. So those are the ones that you're really going to be hitting hard. Yeah, again, you get a paper booklet, and you are not allowed to use a laptop at all. In fact, you can't even take your laptop into the room on the second day. You use a paper booklet and you answer the questions on a bubble sheet. Yeah, that's pretty much all we need to say about that. Okay, so those are the 3 parts of the exam: the MPTs, the essays, and the multiple choice. And those are all the topics that you have to be pretty well acquainted with. Like, you could have a couple of weak topics, but you need to have pretty good strength on most of them to succeed on exam day. Let's talk about exam day and what to expect in terms of logistics and practicalities. So the first thing that you should do, not the first thing, there's lots of other things you should have done already, but one thing that you should do relatively soon is take a look at the Board of Law Examiners' general instructions. If you're taking the exam in Texas, if you're taking the exam elsewhere, there's probably a similar document for whatever jurisdiction you're taking the exam in. But these are the general instructions. It's I don't know, 14 pages or so of pretty dense text. But there's a lot of good information in here. One of the things that you want to pay attention to is, what are you allowed to take into the exam room on the 2 different exam days, and what are you not allowed to take? That's good to know, because they might have some little locker where you can put your cell phone, but you're not going to be able to put anything bigger than that. You'll have to leave that stuff out in your car. If it's a few minutes before the exam is supposed to start and you have to run back to the parking garage or back to the hotel to ditch whatever you brought that was contraband in their eyes, that's going to put a significant hitch in your get along for that day of the exam. So do pay attention. We're just skim over it, but pay attention to the stuff that you can take and cannot take. Take a sweatshirt, because the exam rooms are usually cold enough to hang meat. That's true in February. It's also true in the summer. No watches of any kind. Smartwatches, obviously, you can't take a smartwatch, but they don't want any kind of watches, so leave those out in your car. There will be clocks on the wall. Sometimes the clocks show the time of day, so you have to figure out what time did we start, how much time do I have left. Sometimes they actually show a countdown or a count up so that you can just look at the clock at a glance and say, oh, we've got 15 minutes left or something like that. And there's no telling ahead of time. The clocks will be visible from wherever you're sitting in the room. They have several clocks set up, big digital clocks. There are bathrooms and water fountains in the secure area, so you don't have to leave the secure area. You just raise your hand to tell the proctor that you need to visit the restroom or go get a drink of water, and they'll let you go. Lastly, the February bar exam in Texas is only in Austin. Summer, it's several different locations around the state, but in February, it's only in Austin. So I recommend that you go ahead and reserve your hotel room now. Get a hotel room that allows you to cancel within 48 hours of your visit so that you can get a full refund or not get charged. Because who knows what will happen between now and February. But I would go ahead and find out where you're going to stay. Now, the bar exam is going to be in the convention center in downtown Austin. There are a lot of hotels within walking distance. I do recommend that you get one within walking distance because the last thing you want to do on exam day is have to deal with the headache of rush hour traffic in Austin. Trust me, it's a disaster. You don't want to be there. You just want to be able to walk from your hotel to the exam room, regardless of what the traffic is like, regardless of what the weather is like, and just be there ready to go. Okay. Yes. Okay. So the exam starts at 8:30 in the morning. Make sure that you leave plenty of time for walking over or driving if that's what you're going to do, going through the security check-in process, which is actually pretty quick for the bar exam, and finding your seat because they're going to tell you exactly where you have to sit. On Tuesdays, you're going to get the 2 MPTs, then there's going to be lunch, and then there will be 6 essays. The law school will be serving lunch at the exam, fingers crossed. I'm pretty sure we're going to do it because we've done it for the past many years. So we will be serving lunch on both days down at the convention center, so you won't have to leave the premises. We'll tell you where we're going to be, and you just come and pick up your lunch, whatever it's going to be. And then in the afternoon, you've got the 6 essays. On the first day, you can use pens and highlighters and your laptop, obviously, to type your answers. Let me digress for just a second and talk about using your laptop versus handwriting your answers. I am a horrible typist. Those of you who have been in my class and seen me try to type in front of the classroom know that this is very true. I'm a 3-fingered typist. I can still type pretty quickly, not very accurately, but I do have to look at the keys. Even with that in mind, if I were taking the bar exam today, I would not handwrite my answers. I would type, even though I'm a horrible typist. And the reason is typing gives you a huge advantage over the 3 or 4 people who might be there handwriting. So it's an advantage that you want to be on the winning side of. Because when you are typing, you can spell check. That's important. But most importantly is you can move parts of your essay answers around or your MPT answers. And that is such a huge advantage that even if you're a terrible typist, I highly, highly recommend that you type on the exam. Now, if you say, I don't like typing on a laptop keyboard because it's too small and cramped, hey, that's okay. You can take your own keyboard. You don't have to use your laptop keyboard. I think they might even allow monitors. I'm pretty sure they'll allow you to take a larger monitor if you don't want to use your laptop monitor. But those are things that we'll talk about in future installments. But right now, I want to plant that seed in your head that you are going to use a laptop for the written parts of the exam. On Wednesday, you get the 100 multiple choice questions, then lunch, then 100 multiple choice questions. By the way, the lunch break is typically an hour to an hour and a half. On Wednesday, you can only take number 2 pencils, no laptops, no pens, no highlighters. And yeah, so that and a sweater and a bottle of water. And that's pretty much all you're going to have in the exam room with you. Okay, let's talk about how to get started because I recommended that most people get started in mid-November. And here it is, mid-December, and we're finally having the bar exam kickoff. Why did we wait so long? Well, for practical reasons. One is because we just wrapped up final exams here at the law school, and some of you were taking exams until last week, and there's no point in having a big bar exam kickoff if you really didn't have time to study for the bar exam yet. Second, because of my own schedule. I'm still grading memos, and here we are now in the thick of bar prep. But yeah, so it's time for the kickoff, but let's talk about what you should be doing, or for some of you, what you should have done already. But that's okay, it's still lots of time. Number 1 is order your books from Barbary or Themis. They're not going to send those to you automatically. You need to log in. You have to pay a shipping fee and a book deposit, and then they'll ship the books to you. They'll get there in a couple of days. You really do need to get the books. If you signed up for a level of Barbary where they don't provide the books, send me an email so we can talk about it. And maybe I've got some old books that I can shoot over to you. But if you signed up for the the mid tier of Barbary, which is called, I'm going to forget what it's called, Guided Pass. That's the one with the books. Make sure you pay the deposit, get the books. Themis, you get the books no matter what. So just pay the shipping fee and get your books. The books are invaluable for when you're studying for two reasons. One is you don't want to be staring at a screen for 8 to 10 hours a day. That's going to drive you insane. But to the extent that you are staring at the screen for long hours a day, it's nice to have the actual paper, tangible books that you can mark up and put sticky notes in, or even rip into different chapters. I've had people do that before. You'll get your book deposit back no matter what condition the books are. You just have to send back whatever shreds are left at the end of bar prep and they'll refund you. So get those books. Next is sign up for Adaptabar. Again, talk about Adaptabar. I'm going to talk about it right now. What is Adaptabar? So Adaptabar is a multiple choice practice platform. It's got 1,900 or more questions that Adaptabar has licensed from the National Council of Bar Examiners. They're the folks who are writing the exam. So the questions that they license are the best reflection of the kind of question that you can expect to see on exam day. The adapt part of the name Adaptabar refers to an algorithm that they have that forces you to work on your weaknesses. So after you've answered, based on my data, I think it's around 350 questions, the algorithm figures out what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses in terms of the various topics and subtopics that are tested on the multiple choice part of the exam. And it forces you to work on those weaknesses by simply giving you more questions. So let's say intentional torts is your particular Achilles heel. It's going to give you more intentional torts questions than your buddy who's good at intentional torts, but maybe not so good at the Commerce Clause. They're going to get a lot more questions on the Commerce Clause. So that's what you're paying for, is that adaptive algorithm that forces you to work on your weaknesses. As we'll discuss in future installments, usually through the Bar Prep blog, more on that in a second, working on your weaknesses is huge in Bar Prep after you've identified what those weaknesses are. So Adaptabar, it's not free. It does cost $350, but it has been instrumental in the high bar pass rates that we have achieved in the past few years. Before 2019, nobody at Texas A&M was using Adaptabar. After 2019, lots of people are using it, and we've had that continual increase in our bar pass rate almost every year. The discount code is there on the screen. I also put it in the group me. You have to sign up with your TAMU law address. If you signed up already and did not get the discount, send me an email and I will do what is necessary to get Adaptabar to refund you the $50. Okay, I do highly recommend it. Okay, so what about this other product? For those of you who are on Themis, it's called UWorld. It doesn't cost anything extra. You don't have to pay the $350. It is the exact same questions that Adaptabar has because they're licensing them from the NCBE just like Adaptabar does. So the question is, if you're already on Themis, do you have to get Adaptabar in addition to that? And the answer is maybe not. Here's why maybe not. Most of the people who have graduated from Texas A&M in the past 5 years have taken Barbary, not Themis. We did have, so like 2 years ago, we had like 4 people. And then the year after that, we had 10 people. Last year, we had 40 or 50 people. So that was a pretty good sample size. And some of those people used Adaptabar and they all passed the bar exam. Some of them did not use Adaptabar. Some of them relied on UWorld and almost all of them passed the bar exam. I don't yet have enough data to say with any degree of confidence that UWorld is just as good as Adaptabar in terms of improving your odds of passing the bar exam. It might very well be. And kind of depending on how things go for you during bar prep, if you're on Themis, you might hold off on Adaptabar for now and see how your multiple choice skills progress using UWorld. You do need to use it. Themis will assign stuff to you from UWorld occasionally, but you need to be in there hitting it every day to get up to that 1,700 question threshold that I recommend. But for now, it's probably good enough to use UWorld. And then as I track your progress over the course of the next few months, we can revisit that question because you can get your money's worth out of Adaptabar if you buy it, say, 3 or 4 weeks before the actual exam. That's still enough time to get bang for your buck. Okay, so anyway, highly recommend Adaptabar or UWorld. Even if you're on Themis, you might consider Adaptabar, but it's important. Okay, create a study schedule. So I've posted about this numerous times in the group me already. Hopefully you paid attention to those schedules that we put together. It takes a lot of time to generate those things. And they're just kind of Like if you were starting in mid-November, what would your weekly study schedule look like? How many questions should you be shooting for in Adaptive or UWorld per day or per week? How many essay questions on your own should you be doing per week? How many MPTs per week and that kind of thing. But anyway, time management on the bar exam is crucial because we know from the COVID year, which was the big experiment, the bar exams got put off for 1, 2, or 3 months, depending on what jurisdiction you were in. Scores went up all around the country. And that's because people had more time to study than the standard 10 to 12 weeks that Barbary and Themis suggest. It's also because they didn't have anything to do during the lockdown except study for the bar exam. So yeah, of course their scores went up. But time management is crucial. And if you had more time, you'd have a better chance of passing the bar exam, which again is why I recommend you start as early as you possibly can. But managing the time that you actually have available, say starting today all the way through the end of February, is going to be very important. You want to know what you're supposed to do every day or at least every week so that you can stay on schedule, monitor your own progress. We'll also be monitoring your progress, but there are some things we can see and some things that we can't see. You're much more likely to do it. It's like going to the gym. If you know what workout you're going to do on a particular day and your goal is to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go to the gym and execute that workout. If you know what it is, you're far more likely to force yourself to get out of bed than if I think I'm going to work out tomorrow. Maybe I'll get up at 5 o'clock. Maybe I won't. You're right. If you know what you're going to do, then you're much more likely to stick to your schedule. I would get a 3-month calendar, so December, January, February, and mark off all the days that you're not going to be studying. I do recommend for everybody that you take at least 1 full day off per week. Really just 1 full day off per week and maybe a half a day. So a lot of people take off Sunday, don't study on Sunday, put a big X through the Sundays. If you're going to study half a day on Saturday, put half of an X through Saturday. That tells you what days you have available. And then you can do the math. If it takes 500 hours of study to have a really good chance of passing the bar exam, count up how many days you have remaining until the bar exam, excluding those days that you're going to take off, and divide 500 by that. And that will tell you how many hours per day on average you're going to be looking at throughout bar prep. It might be kind of a sobering number. There's a lot of work to do. Sorry, missed that last part. I also we've lost it now. Don't recommend taking off more than 2 consecutive days in any 1 week, because after 2 days, you start to slide down that forgetting curve. And it's amazing how quickly you start to lose stuff in bar prep if you're not using it on almost a daily basis. Now, Barbary, Themis, and Adaptive Bar, they all know this. And so they've got their schedules and the way they serve up questions built in such a way that you're repeatedly hitting, like if torts is the first thing you study, that's not going to be the only time you study torts. It's going to come up again and again and again every few days throughout bar prep until the bar exam. But never take off more than 2 consecutive days, because if you do, you start to forget stuff. And then not only are you trying to learn new stuff, but you're trying to refresh the stuff that you started to forget. And it does not want to advance. There we go. Create a schedule. Okay, so on Google Drive, I uploaded a bunch of schedules earlier this fall. Let's take a quick look at that if the internet is going to cooperate. Okay, so I've got a Themis calendar. I've got a Barbary calendar. These are calendars that we created that have all of the assignments in Barbary, all of the assignments in Themis, plus the extra stuff that we recommend that you do. Now, you can take these calendars, make a copy for yourself, and then modify it to reflect your own personal start date and how many questions you're going to do, say, in Adaptive Bar, how many essays is your target, should be 130, by the way, etc. Right? So tailor these to your own particular situation. If you need help with that, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Professor Deutsch, and we'll be happy to sit down with you virtually over Zoom, probably, and create a study schedule for you. I've also got the Barbary and Themis, what they call the model schedules. They're not really model schedules because they start on December 18th. They're really the drop dead, absolute last chance to get started schedules. Because if you haven't started by December 18th, then you're already going to be so far behind that catching up is going to be extremely difficult. So those schedules are there, but I would not put a huge amount of stock in them. One more thing about the schedules that we created, Barbary made a lot of changes to the program this go round in terms of the sequencing of various topics and various writing workshops that they have. And they didn't tell us about it until about 10 days ago. And I have not had a chance to go back and update the list of assignments on the Barbary schedule. But that shouldn't make any difference to you. You just do things in the order that Barbary presents them to you on your daily recommended activities. And you just keep doing the next thing. Just keep doing the next thing. Don't jump around in Barbary. Don't jump around in Themis, or if you're using one of the other platforms, just do the assignments in the sequence that they recommend, because they've spent a lot of time and money and data science figuring out what is the optimal sequence for students to study these various topics. And of course, the two major platforms, they're not exactly the same, so they disagree on about what is the optimal sequence, but they both have pretty good sequences. So don't try and figure it out on your own. Trust their data science and do what they recommend. Okay. And then, yeah, once more time, talk to your loved ones, because they're not going to understand what you're going through. A lot of times I hear students say, well, I graduated and they were with me all the way through graduation and they thought that was the end of it. And they don't realize that what comes between graduation and the bar exam is even worse than anything they had to deal with while you were in law school studying for finals or whatever. So yeah, tell them about this. Tell them that you've got this monumental task ahead of you, but it's one and done. And if you do it right the first time, you won't have to do it again a second time. And after that, you will be the lawyer that they want you to be. So just make sure they know what's coming. Okay. And then lastly, just do it. Just jump in with both feet and start studying for the bar exam. Don't ease your way into it. We're at the point now where you really need to just get in there and spend a substantial chunk of every day studying for the exam. Don't try to come up with your own, like, I'm gonna outsmart Barbary and Themis kind of study schedule. Just do what they recommend, because they know what they're doing. It's a well-worn rut. We've seen the success. You will see the success too, but you've got to follow the plan. I would say that one of the main causes for our very smart students who do not succeed on the bar exam on the first try is because they're going to do their own thing. They think that, well, the way they're teaching the bar exam material doesn't mesh with my learning style. Forget your learning style. That's a bunch of rubbish anyway. It's what they, sorry, let me start that sentence over. They know the optimal way to teach this stuff, given the limitations of online study and things like that, and the amount of time that we have. Just do what they recommend. Just do it. Just get up every day and do what they're recommending. Why do I keep harping about this? It's because it's going to be difficult sometimes to make yourself do the things. You're going to want to skip around. You're going to want to study the topics that you like, that are easy for you, and that's a mistake. You really got to work on your weaknesses. The things that you don't want to see on the bar exam are the things that are going to show up, and those are the things that you need to study. So just do it, start studying, follow the program, do what your schedule says, and commit. Just jump in with both feet and get it done. You need to treat bar prep like a full-time job from now until February. And it's unique in terms of jobs because not only are you the employee, but you are also the boss. So you've got to make yourself do these things. Nobody else can do that part for you. That commitment, that internal fortitude that is necessary to power through, that's you. Now, we've got your back. And anytime you need talk back from the ledge, reach out to me, reach out to Professor Deutsch. You can reach out to Dean Adier. We're all here 100% on your team. But in the wee hours of the morning, when it's time to get up and start going, that's all you. So be the boss that you need to be the employee that you need to be, treat it like a full-time job, and it's going to be okay. All right, let's talk about some mistakes that people make in bar prep, because you've never done this before. So top 10 mistakes. Number 10, rewatching lectures or pausing lectures, or I could say taking copious notes on the lectures. Total waste of time. Here's why. During bar prep, only 20% of the learning comes from watching lectures and reading outlines. The other 80% comes from answering practice questions. Now, it's more than 20% of the time that you're going to be spending on these lectures, especially in the early days where the lectures take up about 50% of your study day. But really, it's only 20% of the learning. So if you're slowing those lectures down, if you're taking lots and lots of notes, if you are essentially recreating the outline, it's a waste of time. What are you supposed to get out of the lectures? All you're supposed to get out of the lectures is a broad overview of the law, sometimes with some deep dives into areas that are heavily tested on the bar exam. But it's really just building a framework in your head that you're going to fill in by answering practice questions. So think of it that way. It's giving you the structure on which to organize all the information that you have to memorize for the bar exam, but you're not supposed to master the topics just by watching the lectures. They're there to give you that 10,000-foot overview, and then you really start to learn it by answering the practice questions. So don't slow those videos down. Don't rewatch them. Don't rewind them. Just let the thing wash over. If there's something that you missed, you didn't quite understand what the guy was saying or the gal was saying when they were lecturing, or you tuned out for a second, that's okay. Just let it go, because the practice questions are going to reinforce whatever it is they said, or maybe teach it to you in the first instance. Okay, number 9, making your own long outlines. One-page outlines are fantastic. We get close to the end of bar prep and you're consolidating everything you know about torts onto a one-page front and back outline. That's great. I mean, obviously you can't take it in with you. You have to commit all that stuff to memory, but it's kind of a review sheet that you can look at the end of every day. Those are fantastic. What's not fantastic is creating your own long law school style outline. A substantial chunk of the books that Barbary and Themis will provide to you are the outlines that they have created. You're not going to make a better outline than the ones that they've already done, because they've been refining these things for decades. These are great outlines. And they reflect what's going to be tested on the bar exam, because they know what's tested on the bar exam, and you don't yet. So don't make your own outlines, especially not from the videos. Don't transcribe the outlines into your own notes. If at the end of the bar prep season, you're going to make your own one-page cheat sheets, is the way I like to think of them, that's fine. But don't make long outlines. Number 8, gaming bar prep. What do I mean by that? That's what I was talking about earlier, where you try to outsmart Barbary, outsmart Themis, and come up with your own approach to studying for the bar exam. Just don't do it. They know what they're doing. They've helped tens of thousands of people pass the bar exam. I haven't helped that many, but I've helped quite a few now. Do what they say, do what I say, and you're going to have a good day on the bar exam. There are things that feel like studying, like you're on Reddit and you're researching what people think is the best way to study for X. Don't do that. In fact, I would just tune out of Reddit altogether. There's the bar exam subreddits, and they're largely a waste of time. Don't game bar prep. Just do what the bar prep companies are telling you to do. Okay, falling behind. Don't fall behind. Keep up with the work every day, and make every day count. Once you fall behind, then not only are you going to have to do tomorrow's work, but you're going to have to do yesterday's work on top of it as well, which makes for a very long day. You're already going to be dealing with stress and cognitive overload and burnout. When you fall behind, all of those things are aggravated. And what happens is, and I'll show you a chart here soon that shows the progress of people who pass the exam and people who don't pass the exam, is that it tends to snowball. So once you get a little bit behind, the cognitive load of trying to get caught up is so demanding that you actually start to fall further and further behind. And it snowballs to the point that it gets to a point where there's no hope of catching up. So don't fall behind, just stay with it. If you do fall behind and you need a plan to catch up, contact me and I will help you figure out how much extra time to add to your days to get it to the point where you're not going to go crazy, but you're going to have a good chance of passing the bar exam. Okay, burning out or peaking too early. Usually not much of a problem. Probably shouldn't be on the top 10, but it's something that you need to be cognizant of. For instance, if you were to blow through all of the adaptive bar questions in the next 4 weeks, what would you have to practice on for the 8 weeks after that? That would not be a good situation. So you want to kind of pace yourself and save some things for later in the bar prep season. Also, if you start right off the bat putting in 10 to 12-hour days, you will burn out. It's just not sustainable. The human brain and human body can't cope with that. Now, towards the end of bar prep, you will be putting in 10-hour days, maybe not quite that much, but close to it. But don't do it early, because you can't keep that up all the way through the end of February. For the last 2 weeks, maybe, but not for the next 12 weeks. Okay, freaking out. There are 2 kinds of stress on the bar exam. One is good, one is not good. The one is the kind that motivates you to try harder. You realize, I've got this big thing that's coming up ahead of me. This is my dream to be a lawyer, and this is the only thing that's standing between me and the dream. And so, by God, I'm going to make today count. All right, that's good. I approve of that kind of stress. It's what we call hormetic stress. It's good stress. The other kind of stress is the stress that makes you panic, that causes paralysis, that stops you from actually doing the things you need to do. Well, how do you avoid that? Well, if you get to that point, then again, you can call me, you can call Professor Deutsch. We've had a lot of practice talking people back from the ledge so that they stop freaking out and get back to studying. But mainly you can help yourself by just doing the next thing, just doing the next thing, baby steps. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Just keep doing the next thing, keep doing the next thing. And come February, you'll be ready for the bar exam. Yeah, but don't freak out about it. Okay, number 4. Now we're getting to the important stuff. Waiting to answer practice questions until you have mastered a topic. So where this typically comes up is people don't want to answer questions in Adaptabar or UWorld on topics that they're not comfortable with. That is a mistake. Because again, how did I say we learn? Whoop, that's not the slide I expected. 20% of the learning comes from watching videos and reading outlines. The other 80% is from answering practice questions. Well, if you're learning the law by answering practice questions, of course you're going to get a lot of those questions wrong at the beginning. But it's by getting them wrong that you know what little gap in the outline in your head you need to plug in so you can get that question right the next time around. So don't wait until you've mastered torts to start answering torts questions, either in our essay bank or in Adaptabar or in UWorld. Jump right in and answer torts. Now, I'm going to say the same thing about the topics that you haven't covered in your bar prep course yet. So let's say, I don't even know what the sequence is this year for Barbary, but let's say they're doing torts and then they're doing contracts and then they're doing con law. And they haven't done real property yet, so you don't want to answer any real property questions. But you had real property in law school. You know something about it. So just jump in and start answering some real property questions. That's the best way to get this information to come back to you from the 2 or 3 years since you studied that particular topic. And it's the best way to relearn it or to learn the things that you didn't cover in your law school class. So just jump in and start answering questions from all of the topics, not merely the topics that Barbary or Themis has already covered. And certainly don't wait until you feel like you've mastered it. Yeah, because when are you going to have this stuff mastered? You might not even have it mastered on the day of the bar exam. You just have to be good enough at it to pass the exam. If you wait till you master it, then you're not going to have enough time to answer practice questions. Okay, not answering enough practice questions of all kinds. So your MPTs, your essays, your multiple choice questions. Here's that slide. So the 20 versus 80% again, you've got to answer a lot of practice questions of all kinds to do well on the bar exam. This is so important that I think, and someday I would like to run an experiment, but I have no idea how I'd be able to do it. I think you could probably study for the bar exam, skip the lectures and the outlines, assuming that you had the class in law school, and just answer enough practice questions, and that would be sufficient to get you ready. Okay, don't do that because until I run that experiment, we have no idea if I'm right or wrong. That's just a hunch that I have, but that's how important answering practice questions is. Okay, not putting in enough quality study time. All right, here's the chart that I just got last night from Barbary. What Barbary did is they took all of our bar pass results going back to 2018 and put them into this little chart. And unfortunately, they didn't send me the source file, so I couldn't make the lines thicker or the numbers bigger. But what it shows is that the people who pass the bar exam, that's the green line, and the people who fail the bar exam, they start out pretty close together. And what this is showing is days to the exam. So minus 100 means 100 days before the exam, which is, we're already past that point now. But anyway, you see that the lines start off pretty close together. And then they start to diverge more and more. And then the slope of the line changes so that the green slope is increasing at a faster rate than the red slope is. It's interesting. You want to be on that green slope. And what this shows is this particular chart shows the number of hours. The people who passed the exam over the past 5 years spent an average of 378.7 hours just in Barbary. This is just stuff that Barbary can track through their computer. So they don't know when you're doing Adaptabar. They don't know when you're doing practice essays on your own. That's all the stuff that adds up to the 500 hours. The people who failed the exam did about 100 hours less. And since this scale is covering 100 days, that means it's just 1 hour of time between passing and failing. 1 hour per day is the difference, which is kind of sobering. 1 hour per day made the difference for those students. So the point is, start studying now and start studying enough. Again, make a schedule so you see how many hours per day you need to put in, and put in that number of hours every day. Okay, lastly, and perhaps most importantly, not budgeting enough time, money, or effort for bar study. Anybody who gets into Texas A&M School of Law should be able to pass the bar exam. It's something gets in the way and stops them from succeeding on that first try. And a lot of times those things are time, money, and just the I don't know what to call it, the psychological readiness to do this very difficult task. So time, you've got to budget enough time to study for the bar exam. Again, scheduling is hugely important. If you're working full-time or part-time, probably send me an email so that we can talk about how to work around that, how to ask for time off from your employer, because you really need to have all of January and February devoted exclusively to studying. Things like that, maybe financing, things like that that will allow you to take off the time you need. And that feeds directly into money, right? Because why do people work while they're studying for the bar exams? Because they need money to make ends meet. The sooner you start planning for that, the better. And we're kind of now at the tail end of when planning could possibly be effective for money. But again, that's something that I'm happy to talk about. And then effort. Now is the time to just dig down inside yourself, commit yourself to this process, remember why you went to law school and that you do want to be a lawyer, and realize that in 2.5 months, you're going to take this thing, and then 3 months after that, you're going to get your law license, and it's all going to be worth it. Just remind yourself that that's the thing that you're aiming for. That's what you want to do. And it will make every day a little bit more bearable. And again, all of this comes to an end. It's not going to go on forever. It just goes on for about 12 weeks, and then life goes back to normal. Okay, let's talk about the resources that we have available here at Texas A&M to help you on this bar prep journey. First of all, we have a mentor program. If you are a JD student and this is the first time you're taking the bar exam, you will have a mentor. It's just me and Professor Deutsch for the February bar exam, so it's going to be one or the other of us. If you're a JD repeater, you will also have a mentor. Again, it's going to be one or the other of us. If you're an LLM or a foreign trained LLM, we'll see. We're kind of limited on resources for the February exam, and we have a record number of people studying for the exam. So the mentoring is going to be more on the casual side than the intensive side. For those of you who do get the intensive mentoring, it's going to be weekly meetings with either me or Professor Deutsch, where we will track your progress and give you words not only of encouragement, but of advice on how to maximize your study potential through the bar prep days. We also have a weekly blog. Every week, I will put out a blog post. The first one is probably coming out tomorrow. Every time I put out a blog post, I will announce that on GroupMe. So make sure that you're paying attention to GroupMe, looking at it from time to time so you don't miss those blog posts. The blog posts have everything from news from the BLE, like the BLE will put out announcements. I'll pay attention to that so you don't have to. And I'll tell you any important news from the Board of Law Examiners that is going to affect the exam. I will put out study tips and tricks, things that Barbary and Themis and Adaptabar aren't going to tell you. I'll tell you how to use those tools to maximum advantage. I'll tell you how to interpret your midterm scores, what to do about them, and all kinds of good stuff like that. So that's every week in the Bar Prep blog. We have our official GroupMe, which is the QR code is here on the screen. If you're attending this meeting, I suspect you're already on the GroupMe group, but if you're not, now is the time to join, because that is going to be my primary means of communicating with you. And it's also a place where you can ask questions of me, as some of you already have. We also have an essay bank and an MPT bank. So Barbary and Themis are both going to provide to you quite a few MPTs and essays to practice on, but we have even more. Now, the essays and the MPTs that they use have all been on the bar exam. We've gotten everyone from every bar exam that we possibly could and put them into these banks. So let's just take a quick look at the essay bank. You do have to be logged into your @tamu.edu Google account to access these, because they're on Google Drive. But we have all of the essays going back for about 10 years, organized by date and topic. So what you want to do is make a copy of this spreadsheet for your own use. You can't edit my copy, but you can make a copy either in Excel or Google Drive, and you can edit it. And what it shows is when the essay was on the exam and what topic was tested. So if you're really weak on evidence and you're looking for evidence essays, then you can just use this spreadsheet to identify when was evidence tested on the bar exam, because it's not tested every time on the essays, and find those. I recommend that you keep track of which essays you've already done by inputting the date completed. The WOR means you wrote it out all the way, you outlined your answer, or you did that thing I mentioned a while back called read, think, review. So WOR. And then what score would you give yourself? So with Barbary and Themis on their essays, they're going to have a self-grading checklist that you can go through and mark up and figure out what your score would probably be if you wrote that essay on exam day. But you're going to have to cultivate your ability to judge your own work. Now, in our essay bank, we have sample answers for almost everything. Occasionally we have checklists, but mostly it's sample answers. So you'll compare your work to a sample answer. The sample answers were mostly written by people who passed the exam in whatever year that question was on the exam. Same thing with the NPT bank. We've got a spreadsheet that lists all the NPTs. If you really need to work on the trial brief kind of NPT, you can just go through and find what years those were on the exam, then go into the bank and find that particular question and work on it. So again, we've got the NPT bank and the essay bank with way more essays than Barbary or Themis is going to provide to you. So when you run out of the stuff in the Barbary or Themis book, and you probably will, then go to our banks and use those to get up to that 130 essays or 10, maybe 15 NPTs. Okay. For all of you, regardless of whether you're in the intensive mentoring, Professor Deutsch and I are always happy to talk with you. Although we will both be teaching starting in January, bar prep through the end of February is our #1 priority. So I am willing to set aside whatever else I'm working on and talk to bar preppers. And then, yeah, rooms. If you need a quiet place to study, please contact me and we'll see if we can set something up for you here at the law school. It's difficult to do once school starts up in early January, but at least now over the break, there will be plenty of classrooms. You could have an entire classroom to yourself. Both Barbary and Themis have midterms that come for Barbary. It's about halfway through the program. For Themis, it's a little bit later than that. But on the days that's going to pop up on most of your schedules, everybody's working at their own pace, so it's not going to be the same time for everybody. We will reserve rooms so you can come down and take those midterms under simulated exam day conditions. And what do I mean by that? In a classroom with a bunch of other stressed out people, as opposed to at home where you've got your comfy couch and maybe your headphones and your dog or your cat to keep you company. No, come down here and do it at school to make it as much like exam day as possible. And we'll also serve lunches to you on those days. So more information about that will be forthcoming as we get closer, because that's still a long way off. But that's pretty much what we do for our bar preppers. And again, perhaps the most important thing is anytime you need to talk to somebody about bar prep, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Professor Deutsch. Here's our contact information, and I'll put these slides on GroupMe so you don't have to write any of this down. It will all be available to you 10 minutes after I stop talking. And this video is being recorded, so if for some reason you wanted to go back and watch part of it, I don't know why, you could do that. But yeah, that's our contact information. And lastly, just keep your eyes on the prize. Remember why you were doing this and what your goal is. You want to get that law license in your hot little hand come April. This is going to be you getting sworn in about 4 or 5 months. Remember that's why you're going through this agony. This is all going to end, but your law license will go on forever. That's the prize. Just remember that's why you're doing it. And that is pretty much all I've got. If you have questions, you can ask them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and, or just probably be easier if you just unmuted your microphone and ask me now. So any questions, comments, or concerns? Crickets. All right. Okay, so I'm going to do one thing. I just got to grab a screenshot of who was here, so I've got a record of that. By the way, we do keep insanely detailed records for everybody who's taking the bar exam. And so don't be freaked out if we talk to you, we already know how you're doing in Barbary, what you got on a particular essay, what your scores are in Adaptabar. We track all of that every week. We're paying attention to how everybody's doing. And so just don't let that freak you out when we talk to you. Yeah, Big Brother is looking over your shoulder for sure. But I think you'll find it very beneficial because we can administer some suggestions when things aren't going quite the way they should. All right. Apparently nobody has any questions. And wow, that's been going for 54 minutes. I would have thought it's only been 30 minutes since I started talking. Guess I like to hear myself talk. Good luck to all of you in the study process. Remember that you're not doing this alone. We are here for you. We have got your back. Everybody here at the school is rooting for you, and I look forward to welcoming you to the profession come April. That's all for now, and I will talk to all of you individually soon. Bye-bye.